Good morning. Can you hear me in the back? Good morning. Can you hear me in the back? Yay, thank you. Welcome. I'm so glad you've come. We are here today to celebrate the centennial anniversary of the League of Women Voters and ratification of the 19th Amendment. Hello, Rebecca. We will salute each other, honor our accomplishments, and our overwhelming collective strength. We have been looking forward to this day and this year for quite some time, but 2020 also happens to be an important year for several other reasons. It's a big voter service education year, especially for our local leagues. It is such a thrill to see you here today. Thank you for coming. We are the chief initiative sponsors. Where's Norman? For independent citizens redistricting commissions. It's a census year. And for an Oregon 6th congressional district, hanging in the balance, an accurate count is imperative. Thank you. And finally, our call for civil discourse is so desperately needed. As our state legislature reflects our national partisan divide and we face a rancorous election season, we call for finding common ground before reaching the extremes that threaten the strength of our democracy. I have the honor of pointing out Liz Bander, an LWVOS member, and our liaison to the National Board. Thank you for coming. She's traveled here from our Seattle King County League, and we are so pleased she's celebrating with us here today. So please, during the breaks, make a point of welcoming her. I am only the current league president for Oregon. Many of us here today are or have been leaders. I hope during today we each take a moment to feel proud of what we have accomplished and look forward to mentoring new members. We are relevant, we are needed, and we are making democracy work. I'm very happy to introduce two distinguished former state presidents for the League of Women Voters of Oregon, our co-hosts today, Marge Easley and Paula Crane. Thank you.
Greetings. Paula and I are truly honored to co-host today's celebration. As longtime league members and former state league presidents, it's clear we have a deep regard for this organization. We share this honor because one of the important things we've learned in the league, and that's 28 years for me and 52 years for Paula, is that it's a lot more fun to do things together. And working together is certainly what made this event possible. Later in the program, we'll be giving the organizers a proper thank you and also taking time to honor the many special guests who have joined us today. And what a memorable occasion this is. Take a good look around you. For in this room today are those who represent the collective wisdom and activism of several generations of league leaders and supporters, as well as many who will carry us into the future. I'm sure that the suffragists of old would be proud of how we've carried on their legacy. Together, we have spent countless volunteer hours on things we deeply care about, including voter education, in-depth studies, and advocacy on timely issues. We've accomplished more than we ever thought possible, and of course, we have a lot more work to do. But it isn't just the work that will remain in our memories. It's the people, the relationships that have meant so much. Today's celebration is one for the history books. So please pass the word to those who weren't able to come today that our program is being videotaped, thanks to Allied Video, and will be available for viewing on the State League website. Please feel free to take photos during break times, and we have a photo area right on my left and to your right. Right there is a good spot, and we even have some sashes available for those who want to wear a sash. Just be respectful of those around you, and don't forget to silence your cell phones. And one last thing, and this is really a hard one, and those of you who have practiced it already, thank you. Extra cautious about our health today, so no handshaking or hugging. And now I'll turn it over to Paula.
It was 100 years ago yesterday that something that something special happened here in Oregon. Two local women, Mrs. Effie Simons and Dr. Esther Pohl Lovejoy, inspired by their recent attendance at the National American Women's Suffrage Association Convention in Chicago, and by leader Carrie Chapman Catt, organized the creation of the Oregon branch of the League of Women Voters, which went on to become the organization we know today. Later that year, on August 26, 1920, the day after the ratification of the 19th Amendment was officially certified, Carrie Chapman Catt sat down to write her thoughts as a charge to the women voters of the nation. It's a fitting time to read this excerpt. The vote is the emblem of your equality. Women of America, the guarantee of your liberty. That vote of yours has cost millions of dollars and the lives of thousands of women. Women have suffered agony of soul which you can never comprehend, that you and your daughters might inherit political freedom. That vote has been costly. Prize it. The vote is a power, a weapon of offense and defense, a prayer. Use it intelligently, conscientiously, prayerfully. Progress is calling to you to make no pause. Act. We'd now like to show you a short video to commemorate this occasion. It was produced by Metro East Community Media with invaluable assistance of past state president Margaret Noel. I saw Mark, yes. Portland members Debbie Runsema, Marnie Lonsdale, Marnie, and Jane Gigler. The video also features some familiar League faces from around the state. We present the League of Women Voters of Oregon, 100 years strong.
It's 1920. After 72 years of struggle to gain the right to vote, American women are about to achieve their goal, and the National League of Women Voters is founded. An Oregonian, Effie Simons, is on the first National League Board of Directors. In the fall, the Oregon League begins forming local league groups around the state. So from its start, the league operates on 3 levels: national, state, and local. Early members studied issues. Today, we still conduct in-depth studies, informing ourselves and the public. From our start, we advocated for better government policies. We still work to improve government. We are nonpartisan grassroots activists. Our history is filled with examples of our positive impact. From the 1920s on, we have been helping voters. We have worked to expand rights for women and children. During World War II, we planted Victory Gardens. Then, we actively supported the creation of the United Nations and served as official consultants. In the 50s, we defended American rights. Later, we supported regional planning. We improved presidential debates and included men as members. For decades, we've had a major role in fighting for a healthy environment. As leaders for voters' rights, we've achieved many successes. We are a key trusted source of reliable, nonpartisan voter information, reaching out in new ways to more voters. Today more than ever, the League is resolute in defending the rights of all people to a livable future.
So my favorite part of the League is what I get from the studies and being around inspired people and the thinking.
The power that the League of Women Voters has to move from identifying the root causes of an issue to then being able to research and identify opportunities for education and then moving that forward to real change through advocacy in our local communities.
Our democracy is really important, and if we value that, we need to have people that are engaged.
The League's involved in so many things. It's really exciting.
Affordable housing and homelessness.
Clean energy, funding for education.
LNG, liquefied gas plant.
Women's reproductive health rights.
The hard rock mining study.
And we're working on cybersecurity and privacy.
Anything that you care about, whether it's social issues, economic issues, the environment can be or should be impacted by public policy.
You find your niche and you take on more responsibilities, and you just watch people grow as they do that.
With the misinformation that has been just really a proponent of like social media and stuff, this is a really good area to find information that you can believe in.
You can find information just about anything that you want to find out about in a non-biased,
nonpartisan way.
And I think that makes the League an honest broker in a lot of settings.
One of the great things I think the League does is sort of decouple the political conversation from the issues of civic engagement.
What is the world going to look like in 50, 100 years? And how can what we do now as both individuals and a community, what can we do to affect that?
You can go a lot farther and do a lot more if you're with other people who are excited and energized about the same thing.
As a new citizen in this country, it's very important how we can participate and make our voice heard. So that's why my interest in joining the League.
It felt like you could go someplace and have a say, and somebody would actually listen to what you had to say.
I've gained so much more knowledge. I feel more confident.
We need to integrate people from other communities.
However you're going to come here, we're welcome. You're welcome, and we want your presence.
Do the work that you're most excited about.
The League is really one of our strongest hopes. That's why I'm a member. That's why I give so much of my time. And I think it's well spent.
Okay. Let's give a nice round of applause to Margaret, Debbie, and all those who participated in creating this wonderful video. It's now time for us to hear from an impressive group of women who have demonstrated what leadership is all about. But first, a word about our panel moderator, who is well known to many of you in this room. When you Google Governor Barbara Roberts, it quickly becomes information overload. So I'd like to give a more personal introduction. Our paths have crossed many times over the years. The first time I met her was my very first league day at the legislature, when she was also a first-term representative, and she took the time to come speak to us about what she was fighting for then. In 1993, when she was governor and lobbying in D.C. at the U.S. Congress, I was a volunteer in my congressman's office and was able to spend part of the day being her guide and watching her in action. When I was state president, she was our convention banquet speaker. And in 2008, she was one of the speakers at the LWVOR convention held in Portland. She has always been willing to work with the League as a League member, as a League advocate, and always as a friend. Please welcome to the podium someone near and dear to League members, an author of 5 books, and Oregon's 34th and first woman governor, Barbara Roberts. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. So I have several jobs today as moderator of this about to be prestigious panel that you can't see up here yet, to a little later call them each by sharing their bio with you as they begin to speak. I'm also getting the honor to do what is called a trendsetter. That is sort of a preface to a more important panel. So I'm going to speak for a few minutes before our panel actually begins to speak. So the first thing I get to do today, and I just love having all these multiple chores here that feel so good. It's just that I can't do that very well. I'm practicing. So, okay, first I am going to have the 4 panelists join us here on the panel table. They don't have to speak. I'm not going to give you their bios yet. We just want them to come up here so they'll have a full view of this audience, and you will have a view of them as the first part of the program goes on. So if I could have, let's see, who is first? I think that Ellen Rosenblum is first. That's because she's the long-term state official. And next is Val Hoyle, who's the labor commissioner. And let's see, who else have I got here? Oh, Lynn Peterson. I didn't want to forget Lynn Peterson from Metro Government. And finally, but not last, the Chief Justice of the Oregon Supreme Court, Martha Walters. That's a lot of power at one table, I'll tell you. So. I am so honored to be your moderator today as the League of Women Voters of Oregon recognizes the 100th anniversary of the women of our nation gaining the right to vote and the League's 100th birthday. So let me first call to the stage, which I have done, the 4 women who are strong evidence that full citizenship for our women produces teamwork, it produces measurable outcomes, it produces leadership, and it produces a culture of positive change. So let me set the tone for our panel and our celebration today. History tells the full story. The 19th Amendment allowing suffrage for America's women was preceded by success in 6 states, all Western states, by the way: Wyoming, Colorado, Utah, Idaho, Washington, and of course, Oregon. Decade after decade, from ocean to ocean, the women of our nation battled for full citizenship. Here in Oregon, it was a 40-year campaign that failed at the ballot 5 times. 5 times. But Oregon women, under the leadership of Abigail Scott Duniway, did not give up. And across the nation, like here in Oregon, and in spite of the huge suffrage lists, there was this unrelenting effort to win the vote. In reality, we were trying to win the vote for women, but in reality, the men held the actual power of the vote. Only men could hold legislative office, making laws that citizens must live by. Only male legislators could refer measures to the ballot. Only men could vote on women's right to vote. In 1884, when the Oregon legislature referred the very first measure to the ballot that would permit women to vote, it failed miserably. The yes vote was only 28%. Yet by 1900, that approval rate by male voters had grown to a near successful 48%. Then in 1902, the state of Oregon passed the very first citizen initiative petition law in the United States of America. And the Oregon suffragists thought they had a new tool for success. But the new initiative law did not turn out to be a panacea for suffrage in Oregon. Quite the contrary. Using the new ballot initiative option, the vote failed in 1906 with 44%. It failed again in 1908 with 39%. It failed again in 1910. The vote was moving, but it was moving steadily downhill. Women's vote in Oregon was not looking hopeful, and then came another piece of very bad news. Oregon suffrage leader Abigail Scott Duniway fell seriously ill, and Dr. Esther Poole Lovejoy stepped forward to lead the 2012 election effort. Esther assembled a team of women leaders, and the 1912 campaign took on a new look, a new strategy, a new activism, and I mean activism, and it created one of the strongest political coalitions that Oregon had ever witnessed. The campaign of 1912 was a campaign worthy of success, even in the today's modern political climate. It moved a loss of 37% in 1910 to a win of 52% just 2 years later in 1912. Yes, in 1912, Oregon women joined the women of Wyoming, Colorado, Utah, Idaho, and Washington in securing the right to vote. The women of these 6 western states were the first in the nation to secure voting rights when the men of their 6 states voted to extend suffrage to these western women. When that Oregon 1912 success for women happened here in Oregon, the national suffrage leaders across the country sent a telegram to Oregon suffrage team. It contained only one sentence that came from the national leaders. One sentence: God bless the men of Oregon. Oregon had made history. And 8 years later, in 1920, the celebration of women's voting rights reached an entire nation. And this year, in 2020, America reaches that centennial landmark of the 19th Amendment. And that celebration will often focus on the women of America and their successes, women taking leadership roles, women breaking barriers, and some women breaking a few glass ceilings. When I compare the successes of so many women today with the women's landscape I experienced and witnessed as a small town girl in Yamhill County, it is oceans apart. Growing up in Sheridan, a community of under 2,000 people, I had no women role models to follow. No women mayors or county commissioners, no women business owners, no women school principals, no female school board members, not in my small town. But let me share what it means when you have that first experience with inspiration regarding women leaders. This may sort of give you an understanding of my strong belief in sharing history, in telling the stories for the generations that follow. I remember as a Girl Scout working toward a merit badge on women's history. And I didn't hardly know where to begin. So I started at my local community library. And I read. I read about Susan B. Anthony, Eleanor Roosevelt, Helen Keller, Clara Barton, and Amelia Earhart. These were amazing women. They were leaders. They were risk takers. They were voters for change. These limited stories of early women and early women leaders were enough to give me a look at possibilities for women, even perhaps ideas about women's leadership, maybe even women's leadership to dream about. So I did. My library gave me the women role models that my community lacked. Role models matter. Recorded history matters. First-hand accounts of leading and those lessons give inspiration. They give a belief that one can make a difference, can actually make history. Well, as you can tell, I believe it is important to become informed about the deep and broad history of women's leadership. The more those stories are recorded and then shared, the more inspiration and success will come to our daughters and our granddaughters and eventually our great-granddaughters. And so today, every place you look in our state, Oregon women are making history and changing history, and that is particularly true in the arena of politics and electoral positions. Women are in decision-making roles at every level of Oregon government, school boards, the state legislature, local government, Congress, the judiciary. I believe it is accurate to say we have witnessed a political revolution for women. And in that vein, I sometimes wonder what the men of Oregon who voted to give our state's women the vote, how those men would react today to the political success of our women. Currently a woman governor, a woman secretary of state, a woman attorney general, and a woman labor commissioner. 4 out of 5 of our state offices are held by females. And for the, yes. And for the first time in our state's history, a majority of our state Supreme Court, Those seats are held by women, 5 out of 7. We have a woman in our congressional delegation and a female Speaker of the House. Multnomah County has 5 county commissioners, and they're all women leaders. And the story goes on at every level of our state government, in counties across the state. Now, I love these special moments, these special days when we acknowledge a milestone and look back on the past. I believe strongly that our future is better when we understand our past. History is meant not to sit on a shelf collecting dust, but to think about and talk about and to preserve. It is in that vein that I took on a project of personal importance and Oregon historical significance. 15 years ago, I undertook a project only a few elected women in our country had completed. I decided to write an autobiography, one that included my 4 years as Oregon's governor. At that time, Governor Madeline Kunin of Vermont was the only female governor in our country to have put her life story in writing. Her book, Living a Political Life, was finished in 1994. 1994. A decade later, no other woman governor had completed her autobiography. Now, as one of America's first 10 women governors, I was becoming alarmed that our place in history would go unrecorded, told perhaps by others, but not by the women who politically pioneered those offices. The history was waiting to be told. It needed to be captured for the future. I began to feel a need, an obligation to tell my story, to share a piece of the puzzle that helps complete the picture of women of America and their early women governors. I started this huge writing project with the idea that this could be sort of a cinch. After all, I was here for every day of my life. All I had to do was put it on paper. Well, surprise. After more than 5 years' work, I recognized I had been traveling an emotional road, unpacking the boxes of my life. I had become part storyteller and part self-therapist. The writing project felt endless, but at last my publishers and I were making the final decision on the cover of the book, and once again verifying that the title, Up the Capitol Steps, was the right title for my story and for my book. Then, by happy coincidence, right here in Oregon, a wonderful new academic partnership began between Portland State University and Oregon State University Press. PSU's Women's Center wanted to encourage the publication of the stories of some of Oregon's women political pioneers. These two universities became dedicated to making these books available and making them historically accurate. What an historical treasure they have created. So let me share that academic partnership and what it produced. First, OSU Press published the book of State Senator Avell Gordley, Oregon's first female African-American state legislator. Her book readings were heavily attended, and there were many questions to be answered. In the last years of her life, Justice Betty Roberts told her story. The mother of 4 from Texas who became a high school teacher and the first woman on the Oregon Supreme Court bench. OSU Press and PSU's Women's Center gave her full support as the final edits were completed for this book. Her story has been told to the world. It's hard to get these back and forth. And like Betty Roberts, Norma Paulus worked with her family and with writer friends to complete her manuscript as her health waned. But like the tough little girl she was from Burns, she didn't quit until the job was done. That strength was what helped her become Oregon's first statewide elected woman. Oh, I forgot one. My autobiography, Up the Capitol Steps, was released by OSU Press just as Oregon began the 2012 100-year celebration of Oregon women winning the right to vote. It was perfect timing, and in politics, timing is everything. And I did book presentations all over the state while Oregon was busy celebrating a big piece of our women's history. These books will help, thank you. These books will help tell the history of early women leaders in Oregon as our state and our nation focus on special programs and celebrations related to the ratification of the 19th Amendment to our U.S. Constitution. I feel I have lived in an amazing period of women's history in America. I have been both witness and participant. I have made a little history, and now I have shared that history in my book. I have captured that story for future readers, for researchers, teachers, students, and for Oregonians. Saving history, sharing history, preserving history, and this year, 2020, celebrating history, women's history. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to share some history memories with your state league. And now I am going to be introducing 4 women, one at a time, so you can hear from these 4 women who demonstrate leadership, who demonstrate strength, and importantly, they demonstrate compassion in their offices, in their life, and in their work. So let me begin with the first introduction. Now I'll be quiet as soon as I find this piece of paper. Okay. I have 1,000 things here that say note from Chris Hudson. So on that basis, I have to find these numbers. Well, this is not good. I don't know what happened here. I lost something. Uh-oh. No, I don't. Well, maybe I do. I'm going to look once more. It's got to be here. Well, this is embarrassing. I don't know where it went. We fumbled around with stuff as we got here today, and I must have put it down. So I at least get to choose the order in which they are going to speak. So these were really great introductions. You would have loved them. And each of them is also going to share one fun fact about themselves that was on a piece of paper, not there now, but they will share that fun fact. So I hope they remember what their staff wrote. Okay, Attorney General Ellen Rosenbaum, would you please come up here and introduce yourself?
my talk?
No, you do it all at the same. No, you do it all at once.
Oh, all at once. Okay. All right. Well, my fun fact. Let's start with that.
Okay. I'm going to sit down and shut up.
We love you, Barb. Let's hear it for our governor. I just want to say, before I introduce myself, Governor Barbara Roberts has been the most unbelievable supporter of women. No one helps women more than this woman who is seated right here. And I have been very, very lucky to be the beneficiary of her support, not once, but twice, or actually now 3 and hopefully soon 4 times, because she actually appointed me to the Multnomah County Circuit Court back in the oh my gosh, when was it? 90s? When were you governor? And then she was kind enough to support me for Attorney General a number of years later. And now that I'm hopefully going to be in my 3rd term soon, she has been an amazing supporter, but not just to me. We are all indebted to her. So thank you, Governor. I'm not going to give the bios of everyone, but I do want to say that my dear colleague Val Hoyle brings amazing progressive values. She's from a union family back in New Hampshire. Whenever Val enters a space, she is able to see things holistically. And she is a go-getter. She is scrappy. She is gritty. She is a fighter. She is an amazing woman. So let's hear it for Val Hoyle. I haven't gotten to know Lynn too well yet, but I will tell you, she is just absolutely rocking it out at Metro in Portland. Already on housing issues and on transportation issues, she is demonstrating herself not only to be what you describe, an incredibly compassionate individual, but just super smart, and she gets things done. Thank you, Lynn. And my dear friend, the Chief Justice, Martha Walters, we were actually in law school together. She was actually a little bit behind me, but boy, she's definitely more than caught up. Chief Justice Walters has literally in her almost 2 years maybe as the Supreme Court Chief Justice, I don't even know how long it's been, she has humanized the Supreme Court of the state of Oregon. And I will tell you that I see her over at the Capitol, and all of the legislators have fallen for her. She is the real deal. She is not a bit full of herself. She is all about humanizing, standing for Lady Justice. Thank you so much, Martha Walters. So I wasn't asked to give the bios, but I just had to say something about these amazing ladies up here. So my special fact that I gave was that I sang the national anthem at an Oregon Ducks basketball game when I was Attorney General in 2013. And it was a nationally televised game, but I was really sad to learn that they don't televise the national anthem. So only my husband has a video of it on his phone. So you'd have to beg. Do you want me to keep going, or do you want to have the others introduce themselves first, and then you can come back?
Yeah, do your piece.
Okay, so I'm Attorney General of Oregon now. I was previously a judge for 22 years before becoming Attorney General. I was on the Multnomah County Circuit Court, District Court, and then Circuit Court, thanks to the governor. And then I was on the Oregon Court of Appeals, thanks to other governors who've appointed me to various positions and then re-elected, because as you know, in Oregon, our state court judges are elected. So I had a wonderful career as a judge. Prior to that, I was an assistant United States attorney, a federal prosecutor for 8 years, both in Eugene, where I helped open the first branch office that we had of the U.S. Attorney's Office, and then moved up to Portland, which is how I then ended up on the Multnomah courts. Before that, and I wanted to just, since this is kind of a history lesson a bit today, we've certainly gotten a great one from the governor, I wanted to bring something with me. I've learned this from Carrie Timchuk of the Oregon Historical Society. Always have an artifact, right, in your hand to demonstrate, first of all, to give you cred that you actually have been around a while. And in my case, I brought a couple of things. The first thing I brought is a memo on my office stationery from 1979, 40 years ago.
And this was when I was in a small firm in Eugene. This is how I actually got my start after graduating from the University of Oregon Law School. And this says, to Women and Law Committee members, Lane County Bar Association, from Ellen F. Rosenblum, chairperson, okay, dated March 28th, 1979. Notice of meeting, the committee will meet on Thursday, April 5th in the Lane County Legal Aid offices. Please be prepared to report on any projects that you have been working on throughout this year. Project 1, this is the only remaining copy, okay? This is not leaving my hands, but you can come and look at it if you want. This was our project. How to conduct a non-sexist lawyer interview. And you know what? I happened to discover this in my garage. My son wanted me to help him clean out the garage so he could park a truck there. And this would not have been found otherwise until well after I was long gone, so I'm very grateful to my son. My daughter-in-law was sitting there with us, and she said, "Can I see that?" And she works at Lyft in San Francisco in HR. And she read through it, and she said, "When did you say this was from?" And I'm like, "Well, 1970s." She said, "Other than the look," she said, "it is absolutely still relevant." Unfortunately, to some degree, but still relevant today. So here it is, folks. This is what I've been working on pretty much my whole career. And so I want to move on to my colleagues here. I have a lot more to say in response to the questions, but I think it would be best to hear from our colleagues, and I'll be happy to chat with you about other things that I've done in my career and respond to the great questions that the League has submitted as we go down the row here. So thank you for listening to me and for letting me show you my artifact. I can't hug. Oh, no hug. No hugs. This is going to be tough with the governor.
Next, coming to the podium with fun facts and much information is our state labor commissioner, technically state labor and industries commissioner. I remember when the industries was not part of the title, so I have to practice. And this is Val Hoyle, and she is doing a wonderful job in 2 years now in her, 1 year in her new office, and she is here. And don't forget to tell your fun fact, because we had to talk about it all the way from Portland to Salem trying to figure out what it meant. So.
Good morning, and thank you for having us here, and thank you for not shaking my hand. I feel like I was born for this moment because as a mother of 2 children, I have spent my life telling people to wash their hands. I'm like, my gosh, soccer mom, school of management, I am ready. Wash your hands. It's been great. So my name is Val Hoyle. I am the State Labor Commissioner. I am the Commissioner of the Bureau of Labor and Industries. But I call myself the Labor Commissioner because here's the thing about this job. Nobody knows it exists. I know, I polled it when I ran for office. We're one of 4 states with an elected labor commissioner, and I won't forget the fun fact. This was started in 1903 to be an independently elected position accountable to the voters and not to another elected official. So we have 4 states that have an elected labor commissioner. Georgia, North Carolina, Oklahoma, and Oregon. Random group. But it was created during the time of wildcat strikes when there weren't worker protections to be a liaison between business and labor and to stand up for workers' rights. And that's how I see my role, as someone that can be that liaison between business and labor, unapologetically standing up for the rights of workers and ensuring that those businesses that follow the law and follow the rules and do the right thing like most businesses do, don't have to compete unfairly with people that aren't paying their fair share. So that gets to be my job every day. I have the best job in the world. We enforce the wage and hour laws, setting prevailing wage. We enforce all the civil rights laws. We certify the apprenticeship programs in the state, and we offer technical assistance for businesses who want to know how to follow the rules. My fun fact, I have no idea what my staff put out there, so I'm gonna wing it, as usual. So my fun fact is my first campaign I worked on when I was 11 was for Mo Udall in the 1976 primary in New Hampshire. I grew up in New Hampshire where they actually have a primary that matters. By the way, we should have rotating primaries. My father was working for Tom Harkin, the Labor candidate. He was a firefighter and union leader. My mother was working for Ford. She was a pro-choice Republican back when that was a thing. And myself and my brothers were working on the Mo Udall campaign because he was the conservation candidate and we couldn't vote. But like I was calling and knocking on doors and putting out leaflets at 11 years old because it mattered what the earth was going to be like when I got to where I could vote. So I did meet him. He was super tall and I was really short. And they brought me out to say, I was the person I was supposed to tell him why I was working on his campaign. I totally panicked and said, he said, so why are you here? And I said, I think you'd be a great president, and I'm here for the pizza. And I ran away. So anyway, I want to hear from my good colleagues, but I am grateful to be here, and I am here because of the work of women before me who paved the way. Barbara Roberts and Betty Roberts putting together WinPAC, investing. Vicki Walker, who told me that I should run for office when I didn't believe I can, and you can't say no to Vicki Walker if you know her. And these women right here, Ellen Rosenblum, who I call on a regular basis because as a statewide elected, everything from what are you wearing to how do you approach this, you know, as an attorney and another statewide elected. So thank you for being here and looking forward to hearing from my colleagues.
Val, tell them what you were arguing about.
Oh, yes, and I called the governor on the way up, and I said, because, you know, I'm always afraid of not being prepared. And I said, so what do you want? What are we doing? And she asked me, she said, so what is the outdoor industry? You worked in the outdoor industry, and that is the bicycle industry. I worked in the bicycle industry for 25 years. So anyway, there it is.
Okay, third person. Isn't this a lot of strength and excitement? I just love that. So, Lynn Peterson is the president of Metro Government, which is the only elected regional government in the United States of America. And she has interesting academic degrees. She has done very unusual work, at least from a standpoint of being a woman, work that you don't often see women in leadership on that subject. And she is going to tell you about her career and her fun fact.
Fun fact. Thank you, Governor. Well, what I want you all to do is put one hand up in the air. You're not going to touch anybody else. And then you're going to pat yourself on the back, the League of Women Voters. Why? Because you actually created Metro. It started out of a good conversation around good governance in the Portland metro region, and it was the League who did a lot of research on how do we actually tackle problems that have no boundaries. We have jurisdictional boundaries, but transportation, you don't care whose roads you're on. We have land use issues, but you don't care who sets the zoning. You just need a place to live that's affordable and near your job or where your kid goes to school. Or you want access to a park. That's how Metro was created. How do we actually solve problems not just based on one jurisdictional's interest or not? And this region and the state have both been buoyed by the Oregon Land Use Planning Program, but by having a metro that actually sets a course, that sets a higher standard for everybody who lives within it. So thank you for all of that early work that you did, and thank you for making it a reality. I can also thank the League for not allowing Highway 217 into Lake Oswego. So thank you for that. Because that is my career, and that is the type of thing I am the most proud of when it comes to this world. I did start off as a Aldo Leopold conservation ethic girl because I was raised in Wisconsin just outside of Sand County. A lot of you have probably read or have had talks about Sand County Almanac and Aldo Leopold. So I believe in looking at systems and a systems approach to the world, and I think a lot of women do. I don't think we get, we like the details. I know numbers better than your names, apologies. But that is what I do. I'm a civil engineer. I started my career 30 years ago in construction, highway design construction, and have been working in transportation ever since. This whole political arena is a little bit of a journey for me because the question really became, where do I have the greatest impact in decision making around building complete communities that are healthy, equitable, and safe? And that is really where transportation comes in, and a lot of folks think about transportation projects, right? I come up to this intersection, it's congested, somebody should fix that. I'm on the highway, there's a shoulder, why aren't we using that as a lane? Y'all believe you're traffic engineers, but it's okay. There are good ideas out there, but what really a transportation project does is it creates access, right? It creates access to land that people want to develop, but it really creates access to jobs and opportunity, to school, to healthcare. And if we don't provide ways to make a region affordable, then we aren't doing our jobs. And that's really what Metro is there to do. And that's why I was drawn 20 years later after working at Metro as a travel demand forecaster or modeler, is to come back and really help shape the next 50 years of our region. It is a big job. We do waste management for the entire region, so we control all of the recycling and waste disposal in the region. That is 70% of our budget. Governor Roberts knows all of this because she was actually a Metro counselor and actually put Metro back on the map, I think. We also traditionally have done all the land use and transportation planning for the region. We have a regional parks system, and we also see most of all the events centers in the region, including the Oregon Zoo, the Convention Center, Expo Center, the Portland 5, Schnitzer, and Keller. So that was quite a portfolio, but in the last year and a half, we've expanded our role quite significantly. And we can talk a little bit more about this, but in November of 2018, with the League's help of getting information out, we passed the first regional affordable housing bond measure in the country. 3,900 units will be built in the next 5 to 7 years. That's great, but we need 44,000. So it's a start. This last November in 2019, we passed a regional parks bond measure. Those two things added up to $1 billion worth of investment, and they passed region-wide by 67%, both of them. Again, with the educational support of the League's help. This year, we will have housing services on the May ballot, and that is all the wraparound services to make sure that once you can get rental assistance, you get mental health, you get addiction support services, and you get career counseling. That'll be on the ballot in May for $250 million a year in support services region-wide. Yes. And then in November, we'll tackle the first ever regional transportation package that will total $5 billion worth of investment, being the single largest investment in transportation history of the state. So we've got a lot to do. I look forward to working with you, and I look forward to the panel and these amazing women that I pick up the phone also and ask big questions of on a regular basis. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's amazing when you look at her full resume, which I could share with you if I hadn't lost it, to see she was in charge of the transportation. Secretary of the Department of Transportation in the state of Washington as well. So Jay Inslee, the governor there, put her in that position. Yeah, she did break the glass ceiling. And I believe John Kitzhopper appointed you. She worked there. And for anyone in the League of Women Voters John's most famous accomplishment is that his mother was in the league, a huge leader in the league. So I never think about that. And you heard several people mention today, the governor appointed him there, or they appointed him at some office at some time. We forget how the role the judiciary plays sometimes in beginning to put people on the track of leadership. And when there are leaders in the governor's office and the mayor's office and other offices like that who believe in diversity, they make a difference in moving women and people of color down that path of leadership that might not have happened without that leader already in place that was willing to give them a jump start, if you will. And speaking of jump starts and doing great things, next is the Chief Justice of the Oregon Supreme Court, doing something no woman in Oregon has done before, and that is who she is, basically someone doing something that hasn't been done before, with Martha Walters.
Well, you're going to see or hear that I'm not a politician. I'm not going to be able to be at all as eloquent as these other women who get up and speak in front of people as many times. I don't do that. I'm in my chambers in Salem most of the time writing opinions, and it is a terrific job. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how it is that we even have a Chief Justice in Oregon. You know that this used to be that the courts were county courts, and every court had its own court. They were operated by the counties. The county courthouses were owned by the counties. They still are, but the employees were all county employees, and all the judges were running and elected in their own counties. There, in 1979 is when we first had the idea of creating a unified court system. And not every court in the country has a unified court system. Oregon is very lucky to have that, and it didn't happen until 1981. And there was a task force that the legislature created. They didn't fund the task force, but they created the task force to look at this idea of should we have a unified state court system. And they came up with this idea. They took it to the legislature. The legislature adopted an act that would make all of our courts part of this unified state court system. And the legislation that passed had the idea that the Chief Justice would be elected by the colleagues on the court. And then the governor didn't like that idea. The governor wanted, it wasn't Governor Roberts, the governor wanted to be able to appoint the chief, and so vetoed the legislation. So here all this work that had gone into creating this unified system was vetoed and over. And amazingly, because of the outcry by the public, that many important headlines in the newspaper said, we need this system. They called a one-day special session just to do this in 1981, and they let the people decide how the Chief Justice should be decided upon, and the people decided that the chief should be selected by her colleagues. So that's how we have the system that we now have in Oregon, and that's how I was selected by my colleagues in 2018 to be the Chief Justice. But I wouldn't have even been on the bench or had the idea of even putting my name forward as Chief Justice if it wouldn't have been for Attorney General Rosenblum and Governor Roberts got me started in leadership positions way back. She interviewed me when I was very first went on the court, and then Attorney General Rosenblum, she's always thinking ahead, and she said, you know, we need a woman chief. Let's think about how we're going to get this to happen. And that's like I went on the court in 2006, and she's already thinking, all right, how are we going to make this happen? And her colleague in thinking about this was the amazing Justice Betty Roberts, the first woman on our court. Betty Roberts was really the mother of having women on the court. You know, we really didn't even have women in law practice at the time that
Attorney General Rosenblum and I graduated from law school. I was in '77. There were 25% of our class, and that was huge. But it was really Betty Roberts who started saying, we've got to get women on the bench. And that effort has made it that we had, when she, there's just so many stories that are, I hope you don't mind me just like sharing a little bit of this, but there was one time when Justice Roberts had a dream. This was an actual dream that she had when she was sleeping. And she dreamed that she could look around. She was standing in front of the bench. We have 7 justices on our bench, and she dreamed that she was turned around and saw that all 7 of those positions were held by women. And they still aren't, but when we first had 7 women who had held the position, not all at the same time, but 7 women who had been on that bench, we had a party, and we had all 7 of us sitting on that bench, and we've got the most terrific photograph you've ever seen with Justice Roberts standing in front of the bench and looking back, and all 7 of us there. It's just, I know, it's just so exciting. And when I first went on the bench, I was the only woman on our court. She had been on the bench before, and we'd had other women, but there had been a 5-year period where there hadn't been any women. And so I went on, and I was one. And then very shortly thereafter, Justice Linder ran in an open election. We do have to run. We are statewide electeds, but we generally are filling a position where we've been appointed by the governor and then run in the next statewide. But Justice Linder, there was an open election, and she ran in a contested election, and she took her position about 3 months after I did in early 2007. And Justice Roberts spoke at her investiture, and on our court, the tradition is the newest members of the court sit at the ends of the bench. And so I was at one end, and Justice Linder was at the other end, and Justice Roberts said, "This is so great. We've got them surrounded." And now, as you heard, there are 5 out of 7 of the members of our bench are women, and we have the first African American on our bench, and that's terrific. And we also have an Asian American woman on our bench, an openly gay woman on our bench. It really does have a diversity that it didn't have when I first joined. So, yeah, I know, it's pretty great. So, like I said, a lot of our work is writing opinions in our chambers and is very removed from the public. But being the administrative head of the courts means being the administrative leader for 200 judges around the state and about 1,500 employees around the state who do the work of our trial courts, and then going over to the legislature trying to obtain resources to run those trial courts. And so what I've learned as I've become chief is the important, I knew it, but I'm just more and more understanding the important role that our courts play in our democracy. And it seems to me that as I go out around our state and talk to the people who are working out in the trenches, that when people feel like they have a place to go where they can be heard, where they can be respected, where they can have their disputes resolved, that they have a belief not only in our courts but in our system of government. And that if we have strong and effective courts that are respectful, that listen to people who are really needy. The people who come before our courts now so many times, I don't know if you're aware of this, are unrepresented by lawyers. In our domestic relations cases, in over 80% of those cases, at least one party does not have a lawyer. So people are coming to our courts for restraining orders in domestic abuse situations, for stalking orders, for child support, for guardianships, to when people are in need of children having been neglected, where we're trying to take care of those children and put them in foster care when necessary, but try to return them to their families. All of this work is being done by judges and staff because people don't have lawyers. And so we have to help them navigate that system, help them see that there is a place where they can go where people care about their concerns, about their addictions, about their mental health problems, and try to get them where they need to go. So we're understanding that for us to have a system that really works for these people gives all of the people in our state a feeling that they are important, that they matter, and that we have a system of government that works. So I'm really being a cheerleader and going out and thanking the people who do that work, because I think it's so important. And I'm loving that part of my job, which isn't just in my chambers writing, it's out there. And I'm returning to a position I had before I went on the court, which was an advocate. I worked as a lawyer in private practice for 30 years, and I advocated for my clients. And now I'm an advocate for our courts, and it's about the best client you could ever have. So that's me.
Excuse me, but didn't I do a good job?
If you kind of round out what you just heard from these 4 women, not only do you see the women's leadership and the professional backgrounds they've had and the kind of work they've done, a broad range of work, but you'll see a theme, at least I see a theme. I'm going to call it safety for starters, because I think it says that. Val Hoyle makes sure that people are safe on their work sites, whether they're building a tall building or digging a deep hole, or that they're treated with respect and safety in their workplace and in their home place and in their community. That's her job. Lynn Peterson, imagine, she said you're all traffic engineers. By God, I hope not.
They think they are.
Yeah, but it's what we do when we drive down the highway or come to an intersection or a stop sign, or there's a big truck in our way, or we can see a blue and red light, and we want to know if we should turn and get the hell out of the way or not. So she does a different kind of safety in our parks, in the Tri-County area, in our distribution and destruction of recycled materials that need work, and whether they're doing that or doing land use that's going to mean, not that you're going to change land use in a way that people get angry, and they do get angry at hearings, but I tell people, having grown up in Yamhill County and knowing that I have smart, educated, trustworthy people doing land use, we used to go grow prunes and hay. Now in Yamhill County, we grow wine. And were it not for land use, that would not have happened. So that's a kind of safety, but don't do it while you're doing the driving on Lynn's highways. So I just want to. Now, Ellen Rosenblum, as Attorney General, actually is in charge of the largest law firm in the state of Oregon. Now think about that. Think of the breadth of that, the Department of Justice and all of the people involved and the issues involved. And you pick up the paper and you see somebody suing somebody, and it's usually the state, but that's her job. They are her clients. And the other person thinking about safety here, you just heard her describe that our whole system, judicial system, is safer for the people who find themselves in those situations, because we have judges who care about the people who come before their bench, and we have people writing the opinions that are going to keep those people safe. So it's not what we usually think about when we think about women holding leadership positions. We got power, we do all. I want you to think about the safety role they play, and just like you say to your children, wash your hands, Don't shake hands, do the elbow bunch. Well, I tell you, another way to think about this, these leaders, the ones coming up who haven't even gotten elected yet, the people who helped others on their way up. So I'm going to ask them to do one more thing before we let them adjourn and do lunch and visit and not shake hands. I'm going to ask if they would choose a question that they are going to answer, not a long question and not a long answer, but that impacts as they think about the election of people of color, of women, of new generations coming to the forefront. What do they see their role is in helping those new people rising to the front? What is their role in helping them be successful? And they can make up their own question and answer their own question, but that's sort of the framework of the question before we get done. Okay? Start with. Oh, that's a good idea there.
No, shoot.
All right, we still aren't taking on our power quite the way we should. I guess I'm going to go first here. Well, first of all, I forgot to thank another pat on back for League of Women Voters, because in 2001, hopefully there's at least a couple in this room who remember that the League joined up and co-sponsored with the courts when I was on the bench the first ever Citizens Justice Conference in the state of Oregon, and it was held up in Portland, but it was a statewide conference, and it was because of the League that we had just a tremendous response, and it wasn't for lawyers, it wasn't for judges, it was for the people, it was for the citizens, and I still have that report, and it's fantastic, and it really did give us a blueprint, and it helped our courts to start doing more outreach to the community, and judges to kind of come down off their bench and do Tell It to the Judge, which was a program that we started after that at shopping centers. So I want to just thank you for that inspiration and for always stepping up to partner and to make sure that we're doing, that we're getting the message to the people and not just kind of in our little, legal bubbles, which we tend to be. And so one of the things that I'm doing now, that was actually 20 years after what I told you about earlier, the Women in Law Committee of the Lane County Bar Association. So 20 years after the Citizens Justice Conference, one of the things I'm doing in my capacity as one of the 56, actually, state attorneys general, because we have territories as well, is to have developed an initiative that we're calling the 1881 Initiative to increase the number of women and people of diverse backgrounds in state attorney general offices. So at the moment, we only have 6 Democratic women and 3 Republican women of all of the state attorneys general in the country, those 56 that I just mentioned. And so the purpose of this initiative is to increase that number. And I go all over the country and meet with people, and we partner with Emerge, which is a fantastic program that trains progressive women who want to run for office. But we focus in particular on prosecutors, on district attorneys, and on potentially state attorneys general, because we feel that that is so important. So in terms of the question, I guess what I would say is, what are we doing? What am I doing to encourage people of color and women to go into public service, and in particular to run for office? And the answer is, that's what I'm doing. I'm going around, and you have to ask, okay? Now, I wasn't asked if I wanted to run for Attorney General, but that was probably because people mistakenly thought I had retired, I had been a judge. A lot of judges go on to do mediation or other types of really important work, but I just don't think anybody thought of asking me. But I thought of it myself, and so I started asking people whether they thought I should run. Fortunately, they said yes. Very good idea, actually. In fact, the governor, as I mentioned, was the first to to agree to support me. But it does take asking, and it also takes recruiting, and it takes training, and it takes support, because just asking is not enough. And that's why organizations like Emerge, like the League of Women Voters, although I know you're nonpartisan, we're nonpartisan, but still, you are all about making sure that we have good government, and that means great, diverse candidates. Because if we don't have that, if we don't have a diverse set of women and people of color at the table, whether it's elected office or not, whether it's the business community, we still only have 33 women CEOs of the Fortune 500 companies. That's not enough. Why? Because we know it makes a huge difference to have diversity at the table. As a matter of fact, studies show that these companies actually do better if they have women in charge. Studies show that women are better business leaders, that they're more inclusive, that they're more empathetic. And guess what? These women-led companies are more financially profitable. And I'm not making this up. This is demonstrated by evidence. So we need to empower women and people of color and all other forms of diversity, LGBTQ, disabled individuals, to run for office and to aspire to head companies. And it's not all about being elected, as you can see, although actually our Chief Justice, I know she said she wasn't much of a speaker. We know that's not true. She is also an elected official, but it's very important that we support judges so that they don't have to be political, because it's very, very important to have the independence of the judiciary in this country, and I'm very worried about that. So we need to make sure that those who are becoming judges know what it means to be a judge, and that means to be fair, to be impartial, to be a person of integrity, and to follow the rule of law. And we are so fortunate in this state to have Chief Justice Martha Walters leading that charge. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say, because she didn't, Lynn Peterson's fun fact is that she plays trombone. I don't know Martha, so she's gonna have to say it. So, you know, we had a set of questions, and one was, you know, how do you empower other women to get engaged and get involved and to vote? And for me, that is really personal, because we as women, and I've seen it so many times as the majority leader, I would try and get people to run for office, and you'd have these young guys that were barely out of college going, I can run the world. And you're like, what experience do you have? I'll figure it out. And then I'd have women, and I think Sharon Myron is a perfect example. She was thinking of running, and I said, you'd be great. And she said, I don't know. I don't know if I'm qualified. I'm like, you're literally a doctor and a lawyer. You're a doctor lawyer, an ER doctor lawyer. And you think you might not be qualified? What is going on in your brain? But that's what we do, right? So women tend to need to be asked, whether it was for me getting involved in politics in Lane County for better schools. Becky Gladstone brought me through the doors, and door after door after door, she opened those doors for me. Or when I wasn't sure I wanted to run for office, Vicki Walker putting money down that I didn't have, the $250. We had young kids, and I wasn't making a lot of money, and I couldn't afford to spend that on the Emerge Oregon program. And Vicki Walker came to me and said, I already paid your deposit, right? Because, you know, if you don't grow up with money, there's a shame in being poor, right? And so she said, I've already paid for it, so don't make me waste my money. You better go. So I went. And then when the seat came open, women reached out to me and supported me. And again, WinPAC, that was started, you know, with Barbara Roberts, with Jane Cease, with Betty Roberts, with so many other women that were in leadership, saying, if we want women to be in leadership, we need to help them get there, because we tend to give hours and not money, so it's hard to ask for that to run for office. Which, by the way, if you know any judges running for office, they're not allowed to ask you for contributions, so just keep that in mind, and you should support them in getting into office, because we need good people in office. That's my piece. That's my political piece. I don't know if that's appropriate, but there you go. But in getting into office, and when I got into the legislature, Senator Jackie Winters, you know, Republican, former senator of this district, she had put together a bipartisan, bicameral group of women that would get together to support each other in office and work on things that mattered for women and families, and it was bipartisan, it was bicameral, and I knew I could go to her office when I was having a difficult time, and she would be there. Would we vote differently on things? Of course. And that wasn't the point. So when women support women, it matters because representation matters. Because you can call out the things other people don't see. Right now in my agency, as of the middle of April, every one of my division directors are highly qualified, nationally recognized leaders in their field for my civil rights division, for my wage and hour division, for my apprenticeship division. All of them are women. All of them are women of color. Every last one. Because representation matters. My civil rights director is, again, nationally recognized civil rights attorney, fair housing expert, has been a defense attorney, a prosecutor, an African-American woman, that when you talk about discrimination, she understands it at a deep level that you can't if you haven't seen it or experienced it. My wage and hour director, who goes in and looks at, works and fights for people who've had their wages stolen, is the daughter of undocumented farm workers whose father got a job in a labor union, and it changed their family's trajectory for her parents and their 9 children, right? So when she goes to farm worker housing to inspect it, that looks like, she said to me, that's the kind of housing I lived in. I feel like we as an agency haven't looked at these people as people, and we haven't paid attention because these people are afraid to speak up and they don't have a PAC that writes big checks, and that's what I want to do. I want to be a voice for those people. That's why representation matters, right? And my new apprenticeship director has been running an 11-state Southeast region helmets to hard hat program for the National Building Trades for the past 12 years. Right? African-American woman, Marine Corps veteran, who has seen how apprenticeships work across the country. And when we talk about getting women and people of color opportunities through apprenticeships for middle to high wage jobs, people don't apply for those jobs in apprenticeship because they don't see people that look like them in those jobs. So that's why representation matters, and it matters that we put words on it. Sonia Ramirez, who's my wage and hour director, was speaking to a group of apprentices, and she said, as women in the building trades, she worked for the National Building Trades Union for 10 years, and she said, every time we walk in the room, there's an odorless, colorless gas, right? And it makes everything harder and heavier, and you have allies, men that you work with, that think they know what sexual harassment is. It's when somebody says something crude, you know, or says, you look hot today. It's that, as the person that oversees civil rights enforcement, I can tell you, it's that. And it is also that when you walk in the room, people lower the expectations and things are harder, that odorless, colorless gas, right? Putting those words, and she said to those women apprentices in the building trades, it's gonna be harder for you. And know that I am here and my door is open and I have made a career and I believe in you, and we have to support each other and we have to call it out and we have to be there, because if we're not there, we can't tell people what that looks like, right? So I just have to say, this week has been hard. With the Elizabeth Warren stepping out, whether you supported her or not, I did. But it meant so much more to that, and it was so very personal because she was erased from everything. If she was a man with her qualifications, she would have been treated differently. And so now everyone's talking about her because she's no longer challenging the men that are in charge for that power, and it's like, well, she did a great job. But where her name was erased over and over and over and over again. So we heard Hillary, she had baggage, she was this, she was that, she wasn't progressive. Elizabeth Warren was all those things. Amy Klobuchar, really incredible, right? Just in her own right. Kamala Harris. And we were erased. And the thing is, people say it's not real, it's not happening. Look at all the women that are in power. But I'll tell you, and every woman here can tell you, that getting to where we are only happened because other women who understood what that odorless, colorless gas looked like helped us get to where we are, and valued the things we bring to the table. I say soccer mom, school management, right? Like anybody that can organize a birthday party for 19 5-year-olds can run the world. I'm serious. Because for me and my job, I get down, I do the work, I hire really competent people, and we just get the job done, right? And don't care who gets credit for it. And because of that, I get to do what Martha Walters has done so effectively this past year, is talk to the legislature about the fact that my agency is a third of the size it was 40 years ago, and we have a significant increase in population and in laws, and we want to do the work. And I have on my whiteboard really big letters, no money, no mission. So they passed another civil rights law. Well, they almost did before everybody walked out. Super frustrating. But they put a minimal fiscal when I said I need staff. So I called them and I said, listen, I guess the message to me is you want me to do minimal enforcement for this very important civil rights expansion because you put a minimal fiscal. And since I want to take legislative intent, it seems that your intent is that I minimally enforce this. Because like the nuns would say, no money, no mission. So you want me to enforce this? I want to enforce it. You better give me the staff to do it because we're not doing it for free, right? It's like my mom always said to me, you have something of value, don't give it away for free. And so we're not doing that. So thank you, and thanks to the women that are here.
Wow. You know, there's a lot going on in my head to try and synthesize what has just been said and also to put forward a new perspective on it. I think a lot of us have had to work in male-dominated fields to get to where we are. I like to say I was probably born with a little too much testosterone. And it's true because you need in these spaces to be able to voice your own opinion and do it in a way that navigates through the world so that you can actually achieve success without, as Elizabeth Warren said, without being called a whiner or not actually bringing it up at all, right? And I think that that's the space that we play in as we move forward, and that's the space that we have to keep making bigger and bigger and bigger for those who are coming behind us. And I look at the folks who were there for me because I had all male mentors until I actually got involved in politics. So Judy Hammerstead, mayor of Lake Oswego, when I went to her and said, I think I want to run for county commission, Clackamas County Commission, she said, no, you're going to run for my city council. We're going to get you ready. And then she called a meeting of all of the women elected in Clackamas County and did a tutorial on how to run. This was before Merge. It was before there was a lot of trainings related to how to run for office that women could even access. And she basically sat down and they did a 101 and sent me off, and I not only got on city council, but I was the first elected chair of Clackamas County. So when women support women, right, this actually can be a thing. Then I think about how I got on city council, and on the youth, Lake Oswego Youth Council was a young woman who spoke to me once. She went away to college, she came back, she called me up, and she said, because I saw you on there, I'm running for Lake Oswego City Council. She won. She is now the chief of staff to Mayor Ted Wheeler. So, you know, just that kind of passing it on. And then one of my only, besides Governor Roberts and a lot of these women up here, in my transportation arena, Grace Kruniken. She was the first Director of Transportation for the state of Oregon for the Department of Transportation. And her big thing going forward is that when you're working in a lot of these rooms, there's a lot of money in transportation. So her question to every construction company and every consulting company that comes in through the door looking for jobs is, what does your board of directors look like? Right? So that is the number one question I now ask, is what does your board of directors look like, and how are you working to diversify that, both in gender but also in race? So I think the one thing I would just want to end with, and because it really has defined my career, is that when I look around this room and when we look around this room, we have a long way to go in a lot of the spaces in Oregon to actually have racial equality, racial equity, and have more racial representation within our spaces. And so one of the things I've been doing for a very long time, and I think all of us have, is really working to bring folks who are upcomers, upstarts. I'm an engineer. Sometimes the words are just lost on me. Just trying to find those folks with talent, no matter who they are, male, female, whatever race, whatever background, and actually allow them to come into my world for a day. And just have a day to spend talking in between meetings, but also being able to access those conversations that you don't normally get to access. Not just getting them on boards and commissions, but I don't want to do that without them having some sort of background in what they're getting into, and having those conversations about how to weigh public policy, and really thinking about the spaces that they're going to be in, and how to be supported and how to gather support. So that's one of the things I do, and my staff just about kill me because they're like, you've now offered to about 50 young people, and there's like not enough days in the week, but we're going to make it work somehow. But allowing, because that's how I learned, is being able to tag along with even people, I would take it if I could just tag along with Governor Roberts for a day today. Because I think what women bring to space is that we assume that there is more to know, that we don't know it all. And I think that's the thing that we can continually put out there, is that in order to advance everybody in the room, we are inquisitive, we ask the questions, we get the answers, but then you have to take it the next step and take what we've learned and put it into action. And everything about Metro at this point is about that action. So it doesn't matter, we're doing really great work in hiring, we got a long ways to go. That's one way. But being able to actually create spaces where people can engage in their own democracy, not just through volunteer activity, but by actually paying them to be experts in their lived experience and bringing them to the table, it is the only way we'll have durable success. They are valued at Metro, and they are valued not just in what we hear from them, but we are valuing their time and energy and their resources, and we're paying them to be at the table and bring their community voices into our space. So that is probably the only way we're going to get durable success, and it's going to be dependent on a lot of the women at the table making sure that we keep making room. Thanks.
They're pretty fabulous, aren't they? It's just really special to be able to be up here. I only have a small thing to add, it's just trying to come up with something different, and that is that I think we need to work on civics education for kids generally. Really, it's very surprising how little people know about our system and how it works. And we've got a great opportunity in Oregon through the Classroom Law Project to have kids go through mock trial, We the People competition, where they really learn how the courts work, how the entire system of government works. They get so excited about it when they can be involved in that. So if you have a chance, and I've had a chance to be a mock trial coach, and I just seeing my first student who started off in 8th grade, and now she's all the way through college, and she's going to apply to law school, the first person in her family to even attend college. And so it's just, you can see the difference that we can make if we help the kids. And then I wanted to just end on a note that I heard the governor express, which was compassion. I think that what matters so much in having women involved is the forming of relationships and in the compassion that we can bring to our work. I know we had an outside consulting group help us on our court. We created what we call a strategic campaign for the courts. It's a 2-year campaign to form partnerships with other people in the state to take on some of the challenges that we have. And these outside people from the National Center for State Courts said, what seems unique about the courts in Oregon is the compassion that the judges and the staff have for the people who come before them. And I think that's because we are having women who care, men as well, about all of us and the relationships that we form. So I think we can keep those things going. We're going to be a better place. Oh, and my fun fact, yeah, it's just that I arrived in Oregon from the state of Michigan in a VW Bug, pulled up at Armitage State Park, which is a little park outside the city of Eugene, put up my tent, got the register guard, which was and still is our newspaper, and looked for jobs, and found a job at a daycare center where I thought, you know, kids are the future, and that's where I'm going to work. So it was a fun way to get to Oregon.
Thank you very much to the panel. I am just going to point out one thing, and then we are going to retire so you can have lunch. We listened and heard a lot of important information today, and we heard titles. These women have titles. But I showed you some books earlier. I just showed you the picture on the front of the book. I'm going to take 1 minute and read you the titles to these books and have you plug it into what you may have learned today. Betty Roberts' book is called With Grit and by Grace. And then Norma Paulus's book is called The Only Woman in the Room. And it is a picture of her surrounded by men in one of the legislative assemblies in Oregon. I can't tell if it's the House or the Senate. Avell Gordley, and this is a really impressive title, Remembering the Power of Words. And I'm going to read you the title of my book again, and then you can have lunch. No, I think somebody gets the podium. Up the Capitol Steps, A Woman's March to the Governorship. And it was women marching 100 years ago and 120 years ago that made it possible across this nation for women to have the right to vote, to give them full citizenship. And that's the title, Full Citizenship. Thank you.
So I think we've given our thanks to Governor Roberts, but let's do that one more time for the whole panel and Governor Roberts. We have some small gifts for you. There's something to read. The book, More Power Than We Knew, The History of the League of Women Voters of Oregon. And you can read it while you drink your coffee or tea from a League mug. Thank you very much. And if you can stay up here, there's a photo op for those people on the panel. And then you can have your gift of lunch. Thank you very much for being here. It's time for lunch. Please make sure the staff can see your menu choice. And those are in the back of your name tags. So if you'll put those out on your place setting. As you wait to be served, as I mentioned, the photo area will be available. And we also want to draw your attention while we eat to a fabulous PowerPoint that will be running on the big screens throughout the next hour. It's a delightful collection of random snapshots from League archives, collected and curated as a labor of love by Portland members Jane Gigler and Debbie Runciman. Enjoy this slice of League history as you enjoy your lunch. And former Governor Barbara Roberts' has her books on sale for sale in the lobby, and she'll be happy to sign them for you. Enjoy. Thank you. Okay, welcome back. We hope you've enjoyed your lunch, and as you finish up your last bite of dessert, I'd like to tell you a little more about our guest, Liz Bander. Could she come up here? And ask her to say just a few words. Liz recently joined the Seattle League and is now on the board of the League of Women Voters of the United States, holding the title of Technology Chair, focusing on technology policy and infrastructure revitalization. She is a senior program manager for Microsoft, and as we look to the current and future needs of our organization, I think they picked the right person for the job. We're so happy she could take the time to be here.
All right. Thank you all so much for having me. I'm so happy to be able to celebrate the centennial for a third time. So it's been one big year of birthdays, in effect. So I started to write something about how the League of Women Voters' 100th birthday and the 100th anniversary of the ratification of the 19th Amendment celebrate neither the start nor the culmination of the work for women's suffrage. But, well, y'all already know this. It's also been another week in a long year, couple years, it feels like, where I'm reminded that politics are always personal. So instead of being the cheerleader that I am not, I'm going to ask for your help in the century to come, because our work is not done. 2 years ago, someone told me that it was hard to have hope for systemic change if you're disenfranchised or systemically oppressed. They're right. It is hard. But hope is not the only motivator. Anger at an unjust and inequitable system is my motivator. It's what gets me up in the morning. Yours may be different. It's just as personal. It's just as valid. So I ask you that you gather your anger, your hope, your love, whatever it is that gets you out of bed, whatever it is that drives you. Gather it all into a tiny bright ball in the palm of your hand and plant it as a seed into the earth. Let it grow. Let it break apart the structures that no longer serve us, and then use it to build new systems that create a more perfect democracy for everyone. Thank you. To another 100 years.
She's a little taller. We now want to take this time to acknowledge and give thanks to the organizing committee of this event. The names are listed in the program, but a simple list doesn't begin to reflect the many hours spent over the past 2 years and the amount of teamwork involved, all under the skilled and very patient leadership of a past state president, Robin Wisdom. Robin? Will Robin and the rest of the organizing committee please stand? Please, and stay standing, please. Okay. Thank you very much for everything you have done. Did everybody stand up?
Yeah, I think they did.
Oh, they all did. Okay. I can't. They gave us a new light over here, and we would like to thank our office staff, Amanda. Why don't I do that? Amanda Crichton and Sarah Andrews, for their wherever. Please come. Raise your hands. Come forward. Are you in the room? There's Sarah.
Where's Amanda? There's
Amanda.
back there.
Okay.
Thank you.
For their endless support. They answered emails at all hours and always happy to do anything we ask. Thank you very much. And finally, we want to thank the Marion-Polk County League for their many contributions to this event, including the lovely table decorations. So we didn't get any of the Secretary of State or anything.
Not yet.
No. We also want to acknowledge some special guests in the audience and ask them to stand. On our 100th birthday, we are so pleased to give a warm welcome to Melissa Dunaway Holland and Sasha Abbey, the granddaughters of Abigail Scott Dunaway. Please stand wherever. There. Yeah. She was Oregon's leading suffragette and our hero. We are grateful that you two are here to honor Abigail's legacy and to celebrate with us. Again, thank you. We have the Time Travelers Costume Guild, which is based in Portland. Please stand. Besides our esteemed panel members, we also want to acknowledge elected officials from all levels of government who are in the audience today. First, would anyone who is a current elected official, whether it's a city council, whether you're a legislator, your water board, board of education, whatever it might be, would you all please stand and let you introduce yourselves, because okay. Can we start? Stay standing. Everybody, stay standing, please. And start over.
We want you to stay standing, and we just want to acknowledge you. And could you just say your name and what your office is?
Yeah, please repeat. Okay.
If we could hear them again.
Say it again, please. Jim Harper, Portland Community College. Heather, I'm sorry, Lane County Board of Commissioners, Chair also. Zan, where are you? I know you. Okay, Zan.
Say her name.
Oh, okay. Anyone? Oh.
Say her name.
What?
Zan Algarat.
Zan Algarat, Benton County Board of Commissioners. There's a Courtney. Okay. Bill Burke.
Burgess.
Oh, Bill Burgess. Is Cindy sitting there next to you? Oh, okay.
These elections.
Elections for Marion County. And I have a note here that says there's a Courtney Neron.
She left.
Oh, she left. Okay. Did we miss anybody? Is this all? Okay. Now we'd also like to have all former elected officials for whatever area. So please stand, everyone. And we're going to work our way around the room and try and... Okay, so you want to start over here? In the... Okay. Thank you, Jessica. Okay, stay standing and we're going to run the mic to each of you.
Jackie Pratt, School Board.
Where?
Roseburg, Oregon.
Thank you.
Hi, Jessica. Jean Raymond, Corvallis City Council.
Barbara Ross, State Representative from Corvallis.
As well as school board and county commissioner, former.
Thanks. Cassia Quillinan, Salem City Council.
Susie Panola, Deschutes County Clerk.
See what you did.
Carl Elliott, School Board Member, North Marion County.
Norma G. German, Portland Community College.
Lucy Labonte, the first all-women county commission in Curry County and the second in the state. Yamhill County also had one of the first all-women county commissions, and I was one of only 2 women that have ever been elected in Curry County for 2 terms.
Yeah.
Nancy Murray, Lake Oswego School Board.
Susan Waukee, Lincoln City Council.
Cliff Trow, former state senator, served with Governor Barbara Roberts, among other things, and it's great to be here.
Ann Brody, LBCC Community College Board.
Is that everybody? Thank you to all of you. Again. Oh.
Barbara Roberts, former governor of Oregon and its first woman governor, former Secretary of State, former state representative, former school board member, former Metro councilor, you heard Lynn talk about that a minute ago, and like so many women, former chair of the school board in Park Rose.
We can all be very proud of all of our contributions.
There are too many league leaders here today to acknowledge everyone, but I'd like to ask the members of a special club to stand, those who have served as LWVOR presidents and EF chairs. Not everyone is here, but those who are here, we have Norma Jean Germond, Chris Hudson, Paula Crane, Beth Burzak, Margaret Knoll, Janet Calvert, myself, Robin Wisdom, Norman Turrell, and Becky Gladstone. And I want to point out that there was an error in your program. There was one previous past president that was missing from the list. And I want to correct that because she was from my league. Colleen Bennett, 1989 to 91. Thank you. And while we're at it, we mustn't forget the voice and face of our state league office for 14 years, the wonderful Rebecca Smith. We couldn't have done it without you, Rebecca. Thank you.
It is now time, Marge and I are different. It is now time to pay tribute to 2 league members deserving a very special recognition. First, I'd like to ask Marilyn Reeves to come to the podium. Marilyn?
I'm up. I'm up. Good, good.
Where do you want me? Right here. Yeah, you can just stand right here next to me.
Thank you.
Yes.
Right over here.
Just, yeah.
Stand
Right there? Stand up.
She can sit if she wants.
I'd rather stand.
Oh,
Okay. It's hard to get down.
As
Hey,
Would
yes.
she like a mic she can hold, or does she want to come up?
I'd like a mic if I could.
Right
this
over
one?
there.
This one. Okay, let
That's
me.
fine. That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
As some of you may know, the LWVOR Carrie Chapman Cat Award has only been presented to one other person in the history of our state league, and that person was Annabelle Kitzhopper in 1995. This award is named for one of the leading suffragettes of her day, a role model to many, founder of the League of Women Voters, and a visionary of the future. And who better than today's awardee, who has demonstrated all of these traits and more to receive this honor. I first saw Marilyn in action in the mid-90s as she worked her magic in the halls of the state capitol, lobbying for important natural resource issues of the day. I watched and learned. She has a long list of accomplishments, and a complete bio can be found in your program. We're delighted to give the LWVOR Carrie Chapman Award to Marilyn Reeves.
I want to thank the League of Women Voters. 61 years. I wasn't here at the founding, but there I was 61 years ago in Aberdeen, South Dakota. And the League had just adopted a water study, a national water study of how to manage our rivers and streams. This is before pollution controls. And I joined the League of Women Voters 61 years ago. And I think one of the highlights of my time in the League of Women Voters was the opportunity, and Barbara Roberts will appreciate this because this is history, to attend the 25th anniversary of the Delaware River Compact. Now, why should that be important? It's because the Delaware River regulates the water supply for New York City. And most people didn't realize. And the League was formed. The League of Women Voters and a group of League members were immediately concerned about that Delaware River and worked for the Delaware River Compact. In fact, we worked for the compacts even in Columbia River here, all across the country. But the Delaware River was the only one that President Kennedy put into effect. Governor Rockefeller and the governors of New Jersey and Pennsylvania, and gee, I've forgotten what other states were in that Delaware River. They all supported this. And Bobby Kennedy he wasn't big on that compact. You know, it's a structure of government. You know how those go. But John Kennedy said, make it work. And Stuart Udall was the Secretary of Interior, and I was honored to go up to Philadelphia for the 25th anniversary of the Delaware River Compact, something that only the League of Women Voters would have held a separate celebration for. It's kind of like this metro count that we have here in Portland. And while I was sitting up there on the platform with Stuart Udall and listening to him explain how the compact was put into effect, I had to think about what a marvelous organization this is, the League of Women Voters. We like to work with government. We do not believe that government is the problem. We like to solve problems, and we do it behind the scenes. And Barbara Roberts, Governor Roberts, after I got out here to Oregon, and I think that Norma Jean Germain put her up to it. Anyway, at that time, they put her up to it, and she asked if I would please join a small advisory group in the Department of Commerce. You know, it was called the Building Code Structures Board. Well, I didn't know a heck of a lot about building codes, but I had served 4 governors in Maryland, and I always think that if the governor calls on you and asks for your help, you try to give it. So, okay, Governor Roberts, you appointed me, and I remember you said, appointing you and the other members of these boards is my legacy. I didn't quite understand that at the time, but later, and you know, I don't know anything about like building codes and etc. But then when we got into it, I was there to represent the public interest, whatever that is. But when it came down to putting sprinkling systems in new apartments, I knew exactly where I was going to go. I was going to support that code change. In spite of the screams from developers who said, oh, it's too expensive, those sprinkling systems will never work, thank God we got it through. Governor, I really appreciated that. That was 8 years, and I enjoyed it. So thank you for this award. Thank you for the League of Women Voters. And let's go and get the ERA done now.
Marilyn, you're getting a standing ovation. Maybe you can hold this for her.
Thank you.
And this is her certificate. Okay. We have a certificate and a bouquet for Marilyn. Now I'd like to ask Norma Jean Germain to come to the podium.
Be careful, she'll want you to join some committee.
Norma Jean's reputation precedes her. The many accomplishments listed in the program hints at the breadth of Norma Jean's experience and her contributions in the fields of energy and higher education and so many other things as well. There wasn't room in the program to mention the many awards she's received over the years. I'll list just a couple. From Lake Oswego, Portland Community College, Oregon Community College Association, AAUW, Girl Scouts of America, Willamette Women Democrats, and in 2018, the Carrie Chapman Cat Award from the Clackamas County League. And that's just a partial list. And now she has one more to add. As a fellow member of the Clackamas County League, I'm proud to call Norma Jean a friend and a fellow league member and to present the LWVOR Distinguished Service Award to Norma Jean Germain for outstanding contributions to the league, to the state, and to the nation.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This is wonderful. Oh, okay. Does that work? Okay. I wanted to tell you, I was amazed. No, I was flabbergasted when I read the letter from the League of Women Voters of Oregon awarding me the Distinguished Service Award 2020, which is, of course, now taking place right here. And I just read it. I was amazed. I was astounded. I truly was flabbergasted. I said, wow. And then I did some circles very slowly and very carefully, and it kept saying, wow. And finally, I stopped, and I thought about, there are so many outstanding, deserving women and men in this great organization who, in the name of the League of Women Voters, and a number of you, will be honored today, but they have served so well, so astoundingly. So I want to say you worked tirelessly to increase voter turnout. That's big, right? And you continually defend democracy and in this nation, and you work hard to improve our democracy on all sorts of fronts. We are so proud of you, and I just thought everybody in this room deserves an award. I really think this way. You have been amazing. So you strive to make life better for all people in your community, every single one, and in this state, and also in the nation, and also in the world. Your constant efforts to safeguard the environment is well known and so very important. And of course, that's one of the areas that concerns me very much, as you know. So I am so proud of the League's accomplishments and the continuous efforts. And I am so proud of you and all that you do every day in the name of the League. I think that's fabulous. And I think you need a grand round of applause. You are terrific. And I think there are no better people in the world than people from the League of Women Voters. Of course, I'm a little prejudiced. Anyway, I'm so very proud of you. And what you do to make this country and the world a better place for this life on this planet, and you are so deserving. So you guys, you receive and should receive so much praise all the day for what you do. So thank you, and thank you very much for this special honor to me, because you all deserve it. And I shall cherish it, and I'm still flabbergasted. Now, what do I do?
Would you like to sit down? Sit over here. Sit down, and I will.
I know it.
And now, we welcome to the podium Ken Niles, who is Assistant Director of the Nuclear Safety and Energy Emergency Preparedness Division, Department of Energy. And he's asked to speak briefly about both Marilyn and Norma Jean, so you're in for a treat.
He's a troublemaker.
He's great. He's great. Thanks, Ken.
Thank you. It's really been a pleasure to be a part of this today, and I really appreciate the opportunity to say a few words and tell a couple of brief stories about these two remarkable ladies. Marilyn, in 1994, was appointed as a League of Women Voters representative to serve on what's called the Hanford Advisory Committee. And it's a 32-member board, very diverse interests, including the labor unions at Hanford, the local government officials, activist groups, and everyone else. And most people thought there is no way this group can ever reach consensus advice to provide to the U.S. Department of Energy. And after a few months, apparently their chair felt the same way, because at lunch one day she resigned. And the board members said, hey, how about this lady who's been very well-spoken so far, and Marilyn was asked to step up and was then elected chair and served for 6 years as chair of the Hanford Advisory Board, and did find a way to bring together this very disparate group. And just as a reflection of how successful they were, last year this group celebrated its 25th anniversary. So I think without Marilyn, I don't think we would have got there.
Hey, thanks,
So
Ken.
thank you.
That was due to me. I got you on there.
Norma Jean has served on Oregon's own Hanford Advisory Board for more than 20 years. In most cases, board appointments are for 2 terms, which is typically 6 or 8 years. And the governor's office does not like to make exceptions. But Hanford is so hard to learn, and Norma Jean was so valuable with her viewpoint that we actually got her extended a few times and ended up serving about 20 years on our board. So, but let me just, one other quick comment about Norma Jean. So in 1990, Norma Jean and I went to Astoria, where she conducted a brief public meeting on Hanford issues. And on the drive back, this was October of 1990, we had 2 hours in the car, and there was 11 ballot measures on the ballot that year. And Norma Jean had a voter's pamphlet with her. Now, I don't know if you remember this. But we talked through that 2 hours. We talked through every one of these ballot measures. And there was one to shut down Trojan. There was 2 related to abortion. There was 1 related to PERS. I mean, there were some really gnarly issues. And I think I offered her a different viewpoint on a few of these things. She gave me a great insight on a lot of these things. I don't think I've ever been more informed as a voter than that election. So thank you for that, Norma Jean. And it's been so great. I know this is just a small part of their major accomplishments through this organization, but thank you both. You're great.
I think we need to recognize Steve.
A good point. Steve Hudson, who later served as chair of the Hanford Advisory Board following Marilyn. He's just right there. So thank you, Steve.
I can't clap, Steve. Okay. Can we get down?
Yes.
I hope I have that sense of humor when I'm in that situation. Okay. And now we would like to ask those who have been designated by their local leagues as Distinguished Service Honorees to stand. They are listed in the program starting on page 8. Please stand, all of you. And remain standing. Please stand and remain standing. Since we did not receive names from every league, we know there are many more that should have been included. We hope all local leagues will take the opportunity to acknowledge these special members in their upcoming local league newsletters. We owe them many thanks for their strong commitment to the league. Congratulations to you all. Please stay standing. And lastly, we ask you to stand if you've ever been a league volunteer in any capacity. Look around, just stand up if you've ever done anything, even if it's a timekeeper at a candidates fair, anything. Look around and be proud of yourselves and this amazing organization. This is what teamwork is all about. Thank you.
The leaders of the suffrage movement achieved an important victory in 1920, but they clearly understood there is no endpoint in the defense of democracy, no saying enough, our work is finished, there's no more to do. When I joined the League in 1992 in South Carolina, it was because the League offered a way to bring together community voices to tackle racial injustice, and I wanted to be part of finding pathways forward. I continue to be inspired by the action side of the League as we fight for voting rights, climate justice, environmental protection, racial justice, reproductive rights, healthcare equity, criminal justice reform, immigration reform, cybersecurity, and I should mention gun safety. The list goes on and on. So our charge is to take courage from the brave women of the past, continue to work on the most pressing issues of the day, but also do the necessary planning to prepare us for meeting the challenges of the future. Our relevance depends on walking our talk on our values, of inclusion, on being forward-thinking as we advocate on issues that continue to divide us as a nation, and to listen carefully to those who feel disenfranchised from the political process. It's easy to feel sick at heart when watching the news today, but I, for one, believe that being around League members is medicine for the soul and a great way to restore one's faith in democracy. My advice to young activists, and this includes my own daughter, who's in the audience today, is to join with others toward a common goal and persevere, just like our foremothers did in the suffrage movement. Setbacks will occur, and believe me, they inevitably do. And when they do, stay focused on the path forward. Together, it's amazing what you can accomplish, which reminds me, if you're not yet a member of the League of Women Voters and you'd like to try us out, we invite you to join us, and membership forms are on the back table. And I want to say that this has been an honor to be here today and speak on behalf of the League, and I turn it over to Paula now. Thank you.
I second that. This has been a wonderful occasion for all of us, and enjoyed even having my husband tell me I spent too much time at my computer for the last couple of weeks, but I'm pleased to have been part of today's event. When League members gather, we often tell stories about our first encounter with the League. My journey began while in college, when I used one of their studies for a class paper. I realized the important role our studies play, both as an educational influence and an advocacy tool for those areas we consider important. I've lost track of the number of studies I participated in over the years, but with each one, I've increased my knowledge and grown as a person. In 1968, as a first-year high school government teacher, or civics as it was called back then, I was introduced to the voter service side of the League when I organized a mock election. Our voter service material was invaluable. And finally, as I became more active in my local league, I discovered how important advocacy and citizen engagement is to achieving our goals. With the League's guidance, I have done things I never thought about doing or expected to be able to accomplish. The League makes all of us better people, whether you've only been a League member for a few months or like me over 50 years. I'll close by asking, where will you be on August 26, 2020, the 100th anniversary of the day the 19th Amendment was added to our Constitution? In November 1920, women voted for a U.S. president for the first time. And I know we will be carrying on that tradition by voting in November 2020. In the words of the current LWVOR president, Chris Carson, let's show the world what democracy looks like.
And just a few announcements before we end the program today. There's a 100th anniversary commemorative pen at each place setting that is our gift to you. So don't forget to take it home. And if you have filled out one of the donation forms at your table, I'm sure that there's a spot for them as you leave. And we'd like the centerpieces to go home with one lucky person from each table. So we suggest that it be given to the youngest person at each table, especially if that person is under 40. After all, we're looking to the future. Congratulations to the honorees, and thank you all for being here to help us celebrate today. And before you leave, If you haven't gotten your photo taken for your group shots, don't forget. Also, Governor Roberts' book display in the lobby. And have a safe journey home, and thank you.